The following is a Spirit Street production.
Big 12 got off to a good start this weekend, 14-2 overall for the conference. BYU, one of the schools that maybe some thought weren't going to be as good. In my opinion, I think they're going to be better than what people think. And they got off to a good start against Southern Illinois this past week. Got a tester coming up this week. We're going to talk to Mitch Harper today. This is the Big 12 Insiders.
Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show, presented by Synergy Financial Partners. Now let's go to booming North Texas, home of Studio 73. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Big 12 Insiders. This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Today, we have Mitch Harper, who's publisher for 24/7 that covers BYU. Mitch, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing great, Brien. Happy to be on with you again.
I appreciate it. Thanks again for giving us your time today. Look, not a ton of expectations out of BYU this season for local or for national media, I should say. I'm sure the fans have a ton of expectations, just like most fans do. Coming off this game against Southern Illinois, first off, I think they look good. They did what they were supposed to do, in my opinion. I think they played well. They played a little bit more physical. I think that was some of the things last year coming into the Big 12. There were some of the things that BYU maybe, I don't know if they didn't anticipate it or they didn't know how physical it was going to be. But I get it that it was Southern Illinois, but I think they played some physical football on Saturday, Mitch.
They definitely did. And physicality was a big focus for BYU this offseason for Kalani Sitake. That's what he wants the identity to be of this team, like pretty much every Big 12 team, honestly. But it's standard operating procedure in this league. So, yeah, BYU definitely ramped up the physicality. And, when you bring up expectations, even the fans this year didn't have high expectations. And there was a little bit of nerves going into the Southern Illinois game, just from the standpoint of, last year in week 1 against Sam Houston, it was sluggish. They won 14-0, and you kind of went away from that game feeling like, is that good? Is it not? Whereas this game, you felt you saw a lot of progress with the offense. The defense looked good. There were missed opportunities to get a few more sacks, but by all accounts, for a team with low expectations going in, solid week 1 performance against an FCS team.
Yeah, it was. One of the things about BYU, for me anyway, is the knowledge of the fans. They're a fan base that understands what's going on football-wise. So it was good to see them get that win. And I'm glad you clarified that maybe not every fan out there, obviously we're going to have fanatics, which is what I am, but they understand kind of what's going on with the program. Going into that, it looks like BYU has found their quarterback. I know there was a little bit of a battle there, but it looks like they have found their quarterback.
Jake Retzlaff closed the door shut for now with being QB1, and rightfully so. I mean, he had a really good performance, and I think what was noteworthy was that the offense was operating at a high level. They didn't have these administrative penalties. They didn't beat themselves. Last year, there were many times where they were struggling to get plays in. They couldn't get lined up correctly. It was really smooth operation, and a big credit goes to Jake Retzlaff, who's in his second year now, 1-4 as a starter at BYU. Last year, he was 0-4, but his arm strength was impressive, too. He worked in the offseason with John Beck, which was the calling card for Zach Wilson years ago, and Jaron Hall after him. So he's kind of fallen in line with that line of thought, but Jake Retzlaff improved. And, when the competition levels up beginning this week with SMU, and we'll get to that, but I think that, it'll be interesting to see how he performs in those matchups, but I thought he exceeded everyone's expectations. And BYU offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick said it was a clear-cut starter. Retzlaff backed that up and proved that with a 348-yard performance.
Well, it's good that he backed that up, because when your coaching staff is kind of out there, it's a clear-cut starter, and then you go and you have that kind of performance. It kind of eases the tension that maybe there could have been within not just the fan base, but also coaches, but also in that locker room. I think a lot of times that kind of goes unnoticed, Mitch, is that when you name a starting quarterback and maybe there's a quarterback battle, there's going to be a section of the locker room that wants the other guy. That's just the way this works. But to have that kind of performance, I think that I don't know if it necessarily shuts the door because guys are friends. I mean, that's just kind of the way it works. But at the same time, guys also want to win. And if you're going out there and you're putting this kind of together, that kind of gets brushed aside a little bit so we can focus and try to win football games.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that anyone that was, heavily in Gary Bohannon's camp, I think they were like, okay, that was a really solid performance by Jake, and they're willing to hold off the cries for Bohannon to play. It was interesting at the end of the game when Bohannon did check in, there was a loud roar from the Lavelle Edwards Stadium crowd because, in fall camp, Gary Bohannon looked impressive. The former Baylor USF transfer, he had some dynamic runs on the ground and not as many explosive plays through the air as Jake. And I really believe that was one of the big differentiators here was Retzlaff's ability to make plays downfield, stretch the field. That's been the calling card of offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick's offenses when he had Zach Wilson and Jaron Hall. And you saw that on Saturday where Jake had 8 passing plays of 15 yards or more. So I feel like that was kind of a big separator for Jake. And we'll see what happens going forward. But again, it was a really strong performance from the offense all around.
Yeah, it was. And here's the thing, and I'll just stick with Bohannon for a quick second. He's probably one of the best athletes, not just on BYU's team. He's going to be one of the best athletes on anybody's team. Is there any room, Mitch, to get him out there on the field? Look, I'm not a proponent of doing the 2 quarterback. You can't play 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I'm not even a proponent of giving somebody a package to get him out there, and say, oh, we're going to get him out there in the middle of the second quarter. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Having said that, is there an opportunity or a talk about putting him out there, having another position, doing something different to get one of your better athletes on the field if he's not going to be the quarterback?
I don't expect that because they want him to be in that number 2 spot, because if there ever is a situation where Retzlaff gets banged up,
right,
they turn to Bohannon. They believe that they can win ball games with him. And, there's so many teams in college football last year. I think the number was only 25 teams went wire to wire with the same starting quarterback in all 12 or 13 games. So you got to have a good backup. So I don't think they want to risk that. They have done that in the past. Back in 2019, when Zach Wilson was the starter, they'd have Jaron Hall occasionally line up in some special packages. But maybe they do something like that. But I don't expect that. I think they want to protect, keep Bohannon healthy, that if he is called upon, and I'm sure there's going to be a game or two where he has to step in, and then, Heath gets thrusted in action.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the running game. Running game looked good, Mitch. It looked good. We talked about physicality at the beginning of this. Again, I understand it's just Southern Illinois, but you got to start somewhere, and we've seen, and we saw it this weekend, some of these Power 4 teams playing some of these FCS schools didn't necessarily just out physical these guys. It was good to see BYU get back to that.
It was, especially when you consider last year, they were probably the worst rushing offense in the Big 12. And LJ Martin, who was dealing with a shoulder in fall camp, there was questions of how much of a workload he would have in week 1. And he looked like he was just fine. And I thought that was great to see for LJ Martin. Hinckley Ropati, the number 2 running back, he's a solid runner. I still am curious to see how this ground attack evolves. LJ Martin's the star, and he's going to be the guy that maybe from BYU could be, join the ranks of some of these great Big 12 running backs that this league has to offer. Maybe he could be a headliner one day in this conference. But, I think a big credit too was the run game coordinator. BYU has TJ Woods, who they hired from Georgia Southern. He's the offensive line coach. He is almost as critical as Aaron Roderick with this offense. TJ Woods has a massive role in the identity of what BYU is going to be offensively this season. And the offensive line looked better, particularly left tackle Caleb Etienne, the former Oklahoma State transfer. He had his best game as a BYU Cougar. He played right tackle last season, a little bit of right guard as well, and he struggled mightily. He was really good at left tackle last week, excuse me. And, Etienne, they believe that they finally found his stride, and he's going to reach his potential because he is an NFL body. He's got the measurables to be an NFL offensive tackle. It's now a matter of putting out the film and the consistency and the reps, and he looked really good in week 1.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, like I said, they looked really physical running the football. And again, I understand it's Southern Illinois, but you know what? You got to start somewhere. You just have to, and you can't displace just who you're playing. It doesn't mean you have to be a good physical team. We saw some Big 12 teams struggle with that this week. Talk to me a little bit about the defense, Mitch. To me, it looked like they play. I keep bringing up physical and physicality, but again, me and you, we've discussed before, and I think BYU fans understand the physicality last year just wasn't necessarily there. Well, I think they did that against Southern Illinois, but more importantly, I thought the defense played fast.
They did, and that's a great observation because that was kind of a theme in fall camp was this team plays faster than last year's group, and you saw glimpses of that, particularly from linebacker Jack Kelly, Weber State transfer, 4-star in the 24/7 Sports transfer portal rankings. Jack Kelly, from the moment he arrived in January, he's been a first-team guy on that defense, and he's a playmaker. Now, he had some missed opportunities where he'd love to get some of those plays back where he over-pursued, but he is lightning fast. And for his size, too, he can do a lot of different things in BYU's defense. And then what was interesting, too, is that BYU rotated a lot of guys. You know, first team All Big 12 preseason pick, defensive end, Tyler Batty. He only played 24 snaps in the game, and he didn't have any tackles. He only had one quarterback hurry. But, BYU played a lot of freshmen, and that was some valuable opportunities there because, last season, again, against Sam Houston and Southern Utah, they didn't get those opportunities with the young guys because they were a little bit closer than expected games. This, you gave some chances for a freshman class that BYU feels is a home run class. And it's going to be an important group that, if BYU down the road is, say, 5-7, 6, or, has a losing record and there might need to be a decision made on Kalani Sitake, he's got a young group of personnel that they feel could be stars in the Big 12 eventually. So I think that could be something that's an important piece for Kalani Sitake as that continues to evolve. But it was a solid game from BYU. And I think also on the defensive side, cornerback Jacob Robinson, he might be one of the most underappreciated players in the Big 12 conference. And I know there's good cornerbacks in this league, but Jacob Robinson is a spectacular talent. He's one of the best lockdown corners in this conference. He could play nickel too for BYU, but he had an interception in that game and just highlighting his playmaking ability.
Gotcha. Well, before I get you out of here, Mitch, let's flip our attention a little bit to the upcoming week against SMU. I've been calling this one of the bigger games in the Big 12 non-conference this year, just for the simple fact that SMU is in the ACC. I know they struggled against Nevada. I understand that, but it's going to be a step up in competition for BYU from what they played last week. A lot of people think that SMU is a really good football team and was going to win maybe 7-8 games this year and not necessarily challenge for the ACC, but be very competitive. Now, we've seen what the ACC, at least at the top levels, kind of what it's looked like. So I'm not sure that really means anything at this point, but it's early. It's still early. But it is a step up for BYU from what they think. I believe this is a big, big game, not only for the Big 12, but just for BYU because, look, it's an opportunity to put yourself out there. It's on ESPN. I know it's on ESPN too, but that's ESPN. It's Friday night game. A lot of people are going to have some eyeballs on this game. I think it's a big opportunity.
No question. And I think, the Big 12 fans on social media would love for BYU to silence the SMU fans that are always just saying the ACC is so much better than the Big 12. Look, I see it. I see those SMU fans, planting their flag in Dallas saying it's now ACC territory. No, I'm sure, the office in Irving would love to see BYU take care of business and make it clear that's still Big 12 territory, but it is a big opportunity. And SMU is a good football team, and rightfully so that they're a, big favorite in this game. It might be a little too high based off of, last year's, results, and it's still carry over from that. But what's interesting is Rhett Lashley's SMU team, since he took over, he's in his third year, they haven't won a P4 game. Last time SMU defeated a P4 team was TCU in 2021. That was with Sonny Dykes. So, SMU has not had much success against Power 4 teams, and now they're getting ready for 10 straight weeks of P4, starting with BYU. So it's an important game for both teams. And it'll be interesting. Two quarterback thing still with Preston Stone, the first 2 drives, then Kevin Jennings in 3 and 4 drives. If that maintains itself, I'm curious to see how that plays out. But BYU has to get, has success with Jake Retzlaff again. If he has a big game, man, that could do a world of good for this BYU team, because then you could just kind of play the schedule game, and maybe you could talk 4-1, maybe in the month of September, maybe that could be on the table, and that would be huge for a BYU team that had such low expectations. But SMU's defensive front is much better than I think people give them credit for what they did in the transfer portal. But I think the SMU in that week 0 game, they were a bit undisciplined, where BYU, they are going to be a disciplined football team. I think that's an underrated piece to BYU as well, is that they focus on roster retention. All these guys have been through the adversity, the struggles, being basically told they're an afterthought in the Big 12. They're not going to do anything even in their own state. And I think that's kind of a group that almost has this quiet resolve to get things right. They're not going to, beat themselves. I thought there was a really positive sign of that in week 1 for BYU, whereas SMU, much to be desired against Nevada. Now, they were great against Houston Christian, but considering the opponent there, I thought Southern Illinois was a better opponent. But it's going to be a good game. And I think that BYU needs to get off to a fast start. There should be a strong contingent of BYU fans in attendance. There's a lot of people that are BYU fans in the Dallas area and bordering states. They will show up. So it's going to be a good atmosphere on Friday night.
Yeah, and I was literally just going to mention that as I get you out of here, because first off, I'm going to try to get to the game. I live about 30 minutes from Gerald Ford Stadium there, so I'm going to try to get down there, get to meet you if everything allows me to do, which I think it will. So awesome. We'll see about that. But yeah, there's a lot of BYU fans that live down here. I'm in DFW area, a lot of fans. I wouldn't be surprised, and this is just me talking, Mitch, don't be surprised if it's close to 50-50. Just don't be surprised. Look, it's a Friday night game. It's Dallas. SMU, the fan support kind of is what it is. They'll have a lot of fans there, but I know BYU fans. Big game, big city, big atmosphere, big opportunity. Don't be surprised. Maybe it's 65-35, but I just say don't be surprised if BYU doesn't show out in big numbers. So thank you for giving us the time today, Mitch. I appreciate you joining us today again on Big 12 Insiders. Looking forward to, if I can meet you on Friday night, I look forward to doing so.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, it was a pleasure. And yeah, if BYU, they bring a lot of fans. I think that for week 1 performance, maybe get some last-minute travel plans for BYU fans to inspire them to travel down. It should be a really good game.
Absolutely. We will be back on the other side of this. We appreciate you guys again, as always. We'll be right back after the break.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders again. This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. We've got with this Chris Karpman, who covers Arizona State for 24/7 Sports. Chris, how are you doing today, my man?
Doing great. Week 1 in the books, ready to move on. Keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a good week 1 for Arizona State. Look, there's a lot of people out there that thought that Wyoming was going to give Arizona State trouble. I'll admit, I was one of those people. I thought Arizona State would probably win the game, but I thought they'd give them trouble. Look, there's something else brewing, in my opinion, that's going on with Arizona State. Now, granted, it's 1 week. I totally understand that. So I don't want people just going over the deep end. But bottom line is, this looks different than what it did last year, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, I was trying to tell some people out there, Brian. I didn't think it would be quite so lopsided, right? I predicted 30-13. You're never going to think that a team's going to get 2 defensive touchdowns.
Right.
Happened right out of the gate with Cyrus Fiaseu intercepting a ball for a pick 6, second play of the game. The reality, though, is that ASU does have a much better defense. We saw it very clearly in preseason camp. They've upgraded their linebacker position tremendously. That's the heart of the defense. They're deeper and they're more athletic. Sam Leavitt had a good opening start. The game plan was well designed for him, and he executed it at a very high level. Wyoming probably not quite as good as some people thought. Transitioning coaching staffs, that's a part of it, right? But when you get a 3-0, 3-0 turnover margin, and you're playing at home, and it's a good start to the game, that's going to tend to get the ball rolling downhill pretty good.
Right. You know, I'm going to start with the defense. I know you mentioned that at the beginning. I just thought the defense was everywhere. Keyshawn Elliott was everywhere. They were playing fast. They were playing strong. Again, it's something that you mentioned that they upgraded in the offseason, which you're going to need to bring that kind of physicality. Not that the Pac-12 didn't play that way, but we know that the Big 12 plays that way because teams like to run the football. I thought it was a good start for Arizona State with the type of physicality that they brought to the field on Saturday.
I'm glad you brought up Keyshawn Elliott because dude had 111 tackles last year for a 10-win New Mexico State team.
Yeah.
And he did not get a lot of recruiting attention in the portal. ASU did a really great job evaluating him. And he's also leaned out his body. He's got in great shape. He's super athletic right now. And he's just an absolute dialed in linebacker. Like, this dude wakes up at 4:30 every morning to get his day started. He's watching extra film. He's a leader. He's such a tone setter for what they have going on with their defense. And then Cyrus Fiaseu was the team MVP for San Diego State last year as a third-year sophomore. So he's starting next to him. And ASU had 3 linebackers who graded out in the top 20 in the position by PFF nationally. It was the only team that did that. So between what they have with their pass rush, which we kind of already knew about, Clayton Smith is good. He had a sack. Elijah O'Neal had a sack. Prince Dorbit didn't even play, and he was maybe their best defensive end last year throughout the whole season. And he's on the shelf for another week or two probably. But and then they're on the back end. They have very good athleticism at the safety position. This was the fewest yards that any ASU opponent has had in a season opener since 2009, to put it into perspective.
Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't see all the game, but I saw a lot of the game till it was way, way out of hand. And I just thought Arizona State, it looked good. I mentioned it at the top of this, Chris. It just looked different, than what it's looked like before. And I guess that's a testament, when you bring in transfers, and you upgrade your talent, things are going to look different. So it's a testament to, the coaching staff. Switching over to the offensive side of the ball, you mentioned Sam Leavitt. Yeah, I thought he played well. I thought he looked sharp, looked good. It's a good first start. Again, I think you mentioned it. Wyoming probably not as good as what people thought with the changing of the coaching staff. But you know what? You still got to go out there and play, Chris. You still got to go out there and make the plays, and he did that.
Yeah, I felt like Marcus Arroyo, the first-year offensive coordinator, had a very good game plan. They got the ball to their playmakers on screens. They had 3 long screens in the slot that they broke. They had the end arounds to Jake Smith and Jordan Tyson. They have good weapons. And so it was very manageable and easy. But Leavitt looked super comfortable for his first start. A lot of times you don't know with the jitters and guys are pressing too much and they throw the ball, some bad decisions. He had nothing that was even close to being intercepted. I think he had 1 pass deflected of all of his throws. And he managed the game well. He made some rookie mistakes. He took a delay of game, and then he took a sack on the next play towards the end of the first half, which led to a missed longer field goal.
Right.
So, and he missed Jordan Tyson on a ball that probably should have been a touchdown, where he was a couple yards behind the defense on the front pylon. So there's things that he's going to be able to get better at, but the guy's got a very cool, calm, and collected type of a disposition. He runs really well. He's athletic. He has that extended mesh that he pulls and can get the zone read, and there's an RPO capability to his game that's quite nice. I think he's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he looks sharp. Nobody's going to be perfect, especially in the first game, like you mentioned, first game jitters. But for all intents and purposes, I thought it was an outstanding game for a first game. Looking at the running game, nobody had really crazy numbers. And when I say crazy numbers, like 150 yards, I said, but the yards per carry were pretty good. And a lot of guys carried the football for Arizona State. And I know that's part of, getting out to a big lead. You're able to play a lot of people, but I thought the running game looked pretty good too, Chris.
It did. And I've been saying they're as deep as they've been in a very long time at that position group. Like, people know about Cam Scadaboo and DeCarlos Brooks because that was their top two last year, but they're leaner, lighter, and quicker versions of themselves after a very good offseason. Raleek Brown didn't even play, the former elite recruit at USC who transferred in. He's got a hamstring injury. He'll be back either this week or next week. And then Jason Brown was their highest ranked signee in this 2024 class. He came in at the end of the game and was like, he was breaking tackles and running over people as a fifth string guy. So they have that balance, and they can use guys situationally and for what kind of fits their style, keep their top guys fresh. They'll probably be more of a narrow distribution of reps against better teams that are more competitive games.
Right.
But between Lee Fautanu at center and Ben Coleman at left guard, they have two guys that are going to be better half of the Big 12 at those two positions. And so I think that it's really the left and right tackles where there's going to be question marks about what they're able to do from a run blocking and pass protection standpoint.
Gotcha. So overall, I mean, just looking at the program as far as the coaching standpoint of it, I got to believe that the coaches, I mean, no coach is ever satisfied with what they see. You could win a game 69-0 and win the national championship, and coaches are going to find 10 things that they did wrong. Should have been 100-0. So, but having said that, I got to think that the coaching staff, they liked what they saw out of the first game this year.
Yeah, matter of fact, Kenny Dillingham said that it was one of the better opening games that he's been a part of as a coach. Of course, he's on the younger side, so it's not like decades of experience, but that's a positive sign. But then also in the next breath, he said, we haven't arrived, we haven't done anything. And then I just came back from today's practice a couple hours ago, and he was not happy with the first half of that practice. He said that the energy was more like guys had come off of winning the Super Bowl than come off beating a team that anyone good would be able to easily handle, right? So he's trying to keep them focused and understanding that they really haven't accomplished anything yet. Okay, maybe they're no longer picked to finish last in the Big 12. So what?
Right. Yeah, and I understand that. And sometimes – and again, they do have a ton of transfers, but sometimes when you get to a culture that maybe they haven't won a lot of people around campus are telling them how good they were and giving them lots of pats on the back and stuff like that, when in actuality, you're better than what a lot of people thought you were, and you just went out and won a football game that you were supposed to win. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets it turned up. I would suspect tomorrow's practice gets turned up. The heat gets turned up a little bit. But let's kind of turn the page here, Chris, and talk a little bit about Mississippi State. What kind of challenges do they bring to Arizona State on Saturday?
Blake Shapen's a good quarterback, lots of experience. He was slinging the ball all over the yard. He's got Kevin Coleman there now. First-year coaching staff at Mississippi State, they're trying to right the ship. Feel like they've got better talent than a lot of just sort of, the typical takeover. Being in the SEC makes that a little bit easier, right? Their defense is quite interesting because their new defensive coordinator comes from Alabama, but the style that they're running is different than the coaches in his coaching tree. And so that threw ASU's coaches for a little bit of a loop watching their opener, where they dominated because they play odd front and three high safety a lot and things that they didn't necessarily anticipate. It's not like they're reinventing the wheel or anything. You can still get a game plan and everything, but a little bit different. And so ultimately, right, the game is won and lost in the trenches and with ball security. And so ASU wants to make sure that they're up for a much tougher challenge in that respect at the line of scrimmage, so that Sam Levitt can still be in a position to be successful, and they're not getting the ball jammed down their throats in the run game. Got to make Blake Shapen, he's an athletic guy, so got to keep him in the pocket, and then also got to rally to the ball, tackle, not give up the big plays.
Gotcha.
And I'm interested, Brian. The line moved a lot in this thing from a minus 2.5 opening for ASU to like a touchdown advantage now. And I'm interested to see if ASU can make good on that.
Right. I think there's a lot of people that I'll just say this. I think there's a lot of people that kind of want Arizona State to be well. I don't know what it is, Chris. It's one of those national things. I think Arizona State has a little bit of a national brand. It's just kind of been simmering, just underneath the surface a little bit. But I kind of believe that people want to see Arizona State do well. And I'm not just saying that because, I'm talking to you. It's just I'm not from Arizona State. I don't cover them. Not a fan of them. But I just believe that's kind of the feeling that I get. Having said all of that, is that kind of the feeling? Or are people, now granted, I know it's just one game, but are people starting to get behind this football program, get behind this coaching staff, and understand, look, we've got something here. We've got an alumni base, a fan support base. If they keep putting this stuff together, is it going to turn into something that I think a lot of people think Arizona State can turn into?
There's no doubt that it's within their grasp that they can do that. I mean, you look at it, 24/7 had the talent quotient thing that said ASU was the 30th most talented team in the country based upon historical recruiting rankings and whatnot. And this isn't the conference where ASU is going to be out-talented almost ever, because USC, Oregon, Washington, super talented teams that ASU was always going up against in the Pac-12 that made it harder, I think, at the very, very top of that conference. And you look at the Big 12, and there's a lot of good teams, and there's a lot of really good coaching. Don't get me wrong whatsoever. But I don't think that there's any team that will significantly out-recruit ASU's coaching staff. And so that puts them kind of, I think, in a place where if they execute at a high level and they do a good job with their prep and focus and all these things, then they're going to be right there. And there's going to be a lot of close games, and you got to have the turnover margin, and you got to have quarterback execution at the end of games to be in these games. And you got to stop the run. I mean, gosh, there's some really great running attacks in this conference,
right?
But they're just not going to get out athleted in this league, and that gives, I think, a lot of potential. And I think you're right. Kenny Dillingham, he's well liked. And wherever I go, even if maybe people don't root for ASU, there's not a lot of anti-ASU stuff out there. And so people are like, yeah, okay, Kenny Dillingham, I'm interested to see how they do. And the vibe is so much better than it was a couple of years ago. And with the recruiting sanctions and the investigation and all these things, they finally turned the page. They have no more of the sanctions. And they're recruiting at a pretty good level, evaluating talent in the transfer portal effectively. And they got pretty good coaching. So I think they got a chance over the next couple of years.
It's a good thing, man. Like I said, I believe it's just one of those schools that you're just kind of waiting for this thing to get back to a level that everybody can be happy about. We understand what happened for the last several years, but it's over. You mentioned it. They turned the page. That's a good thing for Arizona State. Let's see if they can keep it together this weekend. It's also one of these games, Chris, that I had pinpointed on the Big 12 Insider show earlier when we were talking about big-time non-conference games. I've got this one as right up there at the top. Look, it's an SEC opponent. I don't care that it's Mississippi State, because here's the reason why I don't care, Chris, is because the SEC will push Mississippi State and pound their chest about they're in the conference, how good they are, yada, yada, yada. Well, if they're that good, well, then if Arizona State beats you, I don't want to hear that they're at the bottom of the SEC. I don't want to hear that, because you're never going to hear that from an SEC fan. You're never going to hear them say it. And that's why I think this is good perception-wise. Number one, it's big for for ASU for them to go out and win this game. But two, big for the conference. We can poke our chest out a little bit here.
It's tougher than I think a lot of people realize to travel from east to west for a night game. When it's for Mississippi State, it's going to be a 10:30 p.m. kick adjustment. And it's going to be 100 degrees at kick, right? That is an advantage for ASU. Teams historically have not traveled east to west in September and done a whole lot in Tempe.
Right.
And granted, ASU is very early in this resurgent phase that we're talking about. And so they have to show it against a better caliber of athletes, which is going to be on the field in this game. But I really think that it should be quite competitive and really enjoyable to watch this type of a matchup. I'm looking forward to it just from a strategy and execution standpoint, what we might see on Saturday.
Absolutely. Well, again, man, thank you, Chris. We appreciate you giving us your time today, filling us in on what's going on at Arizona State. I think something's brewing. I've said it twice. I'm going to say it again. And you said it to me. You said it to my partner, Fitz. Something's different about this program. Things just look different. And when you bring in transfers and you get the right transfers, it's not just bringing in transfers. When you get the right guys in there that buy in and can get other people to buy in and they're talented, things can change quickly. It's not the old days where you got to wait, 4 years for things to turn around. That doesn't have to happen anymore. So it looks like things might be going in the right direction. Big game this weekend. Good luck to all Arizona State and their fans. We appreciate you, Chris, for giving us your time today, my man.
Fantastic point there at the end. Couldn't agree more. And thanks for having me on.
No problem. We will be right back with the Big 12 Insiders after we take a quick break.
Welcome back to the show. Let's head back to the studio.
All right, welcome back to Big 12 Insiders. Again, this is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Look, BYU and Arizona State both have big-time football games this weekend. Now, number one, it's big for the program and big for the conference. Look, SEC and ACC opponents, I'm excited to see. BYU's got an opportunity. Both BYU and Arizona State have the opportunity to change the perception of what their programs are in the trajectory. Look, both were picked at the bottom of the Big 12. I picked them at the bottom of the Big 12. I still have them in the power rankings at the bottom of the Big 12. You win these games this weekend, all that's going to change. Now, still a lot of football left to be played. Don't get me wrong, but all of that will change. Number one, the kids' confidence is going to go up. The perception around the country is going to go up. Everything will change. Still got to go win football games. Don't get me wrong, but this is a big opportunity, like I said, for BYU, big opportunity for Arizona State, and a big opportunity for the Big 12 Conference in itself to take a big step forward this weekend in these two particular games. So appreciate everybody being here. Thank you guys again for all the support that you've given us. Big 12 Insiders, we're rolling. We're rolling. I love it. We will be back again tomorrow with more for you. Again, Big 12 Insiders Game Day out on Thursday. Make sure you guys tune in and watch that. Remember, like, follow, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Love you guys. We will check you out tomorrow.
This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production. Please support this show by subscribing to this YouTube channel or follow us on your favorite podcast platform.